What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. I have a guest in studio today. I'm joined by Andy. Andy, say hello.
Studio, eh? Your apartment, eh?
It counts. So, we're going to have the Whip, Dion Arlen, join us this evening, but he's got some family stuff going on, so I'm going to kick the can down the road. I also did ask Dion, and he was down for the Rattler Challenge.
No way. He's going to crush us.
Yes.
Also, yay, I'm a consolation prize.
Yes. Plan B. I brought in Andy as Plan B. So we're going to take on the Whip, Rattlers only, which should take away a substantial portion of his
distance advantage. Well, for sure, especially if we're doing it at Hornings on the itty bitty guy course.
It's
Highlands.
True. We don't. Yeah, there's not really any distance advantage on a course that short, anyway. I guess. But
did you see that they Discraft silently released Jawbreaker Rattlers?
No, really?
Yeah, there's somewhere. I'm sure I could find it somewhere.
Like Ledgestone ones?
I don't know if they're Ledgestone or not, but I think it's on their actual website.
I did not.
And they
see
have
that.
Jawbreaker Rattlers, and there's a part of me that was like, ooh, I don't need this for any reason other than to bring it to the Rattler Challenge.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Well, if you get one, then Dion can have one of the two that I bought for us.
I'm sure he has his own.
You think he has a Rattler?
I would all but guarantee it.
Well, if he has a Rattler and he has Rattler experience, then we're talking. Then the advantage is.
Hey,
back.
wait a minute. You don't. I have Rattler experience.
Yeah.
Have you never thrown a Rattler?
No, I have not thrown one.
Have you thrown a lid?
I mean, I've thrown a Sonic.
Okay, well, it's close.
Or I've thrown Sonics. I've thrown Zephyrs. I've thrown obviously Ultimate discs and freestyle discs and stuff, but I have not specifically thrown a Rattler, which is weird. You'd think I would have, especially coming into the game and being so into the Discraft Clinic videos where Mark Ellis was using them, and most of those videos, I'm surprised I never had the urge to pick one up and just play with it. That was before I really tried out that much plastic in those days, though.
Oh, man, I can't wait for your Rattler review featuring Dion.
That would be cool. We can cut out all of our shots from that and put together a Rattler review. That would be pretty funny.
Yeah, Rattlers usually go anywhere in the neighborhood of 350 to 400.
If we're going to do this, we owe it to ourselves to see how far he could throw one too, because that would be really fun as well. Just
and then
put
off
it on
the top of the hill as well.
Almost a negative hyzer, where it's like such a steep angle where it's coming back around the other way, and then throw it 50% and still probably go 400
to prevent the Skamahawk.
Yeah, if you guys are not familiar with Dion, well, you'll get to know him much better soon. We're going to have him come in and talk to us and stuff, but he throws stupid far. I mean, I think Dion's in the 800 club, which is
I think he
bananas.
Is.
800. Wow. Okay. Pretty intense stuff. So yeah, we'll definitely hook up with Dion later, and hopefully he'll be a little bit of a part of this this show. He's kind of maybe can provide like a more pros perspective for us when we need to call upon that. So, speaking of Discraft, it's weird to see how Discraft is kind of operating these days. It's very strange. I mean, sitting here this time last year, would you ever think that any of this would have happened? That Paul would be on the team, that Paul would be selling all of these Paul Macbeth Discraft plastic, that the sales would be going through the roof? Would any of us predicted this ever?
It's wild. It's really wild. You know, when I started playing back in 2005-ish, it was Discraft, Innova, and Gateway was around, and then Latitude came in right around then.
When did Latitude come in?
I really think they started somewhere between 2005 and 2007, because I remember the Vision and maybe the Trident. And then at Bowling Green AMS one year, there was a Striker in the players pack, and that was the new hotness.
That was old school. Yeah, that one's been around for a while.
Yeah, but I mean, nobody was throwing it. Jesper Lundmark was the only dude that was throwing it.
Right.
And
he was awesome.
Look at it now.
That guy was cool. He was a really smooth player. I liked watching him play back in the day.
But and especially coming from Michigan, there was a lot of Discraft.
Mm-hmm.
It was the manufacturer. You know, they're at every tournament. They sponsored every tournament in Michigan. The Michigan State Championships was a huge Discraft event. I mean, Great Lakes Open back in its heyday. I guess it's back now to a new heyday, but it's D-Glow. It's the Great Lakes Discraft Great Lakes Open. I know it's called Glow now to some people, but it'll always be Discraft Great Lakes Open, no matter if they're sponsoring it or not. In my head, because it's just always been that way. Where was I going with this?
I'm not sure.
All right.
Well, we were just talking about Discraft in general, and like the way things have progressed now that Paul's here, and just all the different changes that have happened over this off season. It's just completely kind of changed the role. They've somehow managed to completely change the role that they have in the disc golf community very quickly.
I mean, it's the Paul effect, right? Disc crap was a term you heard.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
Discraft was like second rate compared to Trilogy and Innova. And as soon as you land the biggest name in disc golf, all of a sudden, apparently throwing Discraft is cool again. And I would never have thought that Paul would have this big of an effect to any manufacturer ever. You know, Innova was always a thing, so I never thought people were throwing Innova because Paul. I mean, people were throwing Innova because Paul was, but I didn't think that's the specific reason for most people. And now, I mean, how many Lunas were sold when the prototypes came out, and then the first runs? They were gone. Kong is an even better example. Those things, they sold out in an hour at midnight.
Yeah. They sold out from multiple places, because I looked at Infinite and they were all gone the next morning, and I think they had at least 400 plus. That's just one website,
which is
across the internet. So
absolutely insane. Like, no disc sold like that. And then, I mean, if you look at the secondary market, you could get whatever you wanted from Discraft for retail, even if it was 10, 15 years old. Like, I could still find Players Cup trackers from 2006 if I really wanted to for, you know, maybe a couple bucks over retail, 20,
right.
25
It was really only like certain runs of buzzes and stuff.
Yeah, first run buzzes were about the only thing, right? First run on the 10-year buzzes were the
there
only
almost
thing.
Wasn't even really like a collector secondhand market for Discraft almost at all. Like, I mean, back in the Discaroo days, I would trade for Discraft and stuff like that, but there wasn't ever anything I came across that was like more than retail, or like less than retail, because they were all used in that time. Meanwhile, like, I found a couple of things. I remember early on, I went to a garage sale and I found some discs there, and one of them was a gummy monster, like a really gummy Champ monster. And I put it on Discaroo. I had no idea what it was. I threw it a couple of times, and at the time I could throw the thing like 150 feet, like it went nowhere. I threw it a couple times, and I was like, I don't need this. You know, maybe I can trade it off. And like 3 people emailed me overnight. And one of the guys was like, oh, I'll give you like 4 different discs for it. And I didn't even know that was a thing at the time. I was like, whoa, this is really cool. But that was not something you saw with anything that Discraft made. You know, nobody was giving you 4 discs for one or something like that for anything.
I mean, 8-time, yeah, exactly. 8-time rocks. Back when I first started, those were the, you know, outside of the 01 and 02 USDGC rocks, those were the thing. Like, everyone wanted the 8-time rock, and then it became 10-time, and then 11-time, and, you know, CE plastic. Innova has always had this sort of secondary value kind of thing, and Discraft never really did. And now you look at the Test Flight Kong that just came out, the one with the little stamp, not the big stamp. People were paying $200+ for these things, and it's literally a stock disc. Yeah. Like, there is nothing special about it. Nothing is going to change between that and the prototype run, besides the stamp, and then, Lord willing, nothing will change between the prototype and the stock run of the Kong, but people are still paying retail, or paying, you know, double, triple quadruple retail because this one looks cooler.
Yeah.
You know, it's insane to me.
The
and it
resale
sucks
thing
because
is so
I
out
can't
of
get
control.
some of my old stuff anymore super easy because there's actually a market for it now.
It's kind of changed the whole relationship with Discraft. I never saw that. There was never a time where people were like fighting over Discraft discs or whatever. And it gets me to another question, and actually one I was going to ask Dion, who's also a super long-term Discraft guy. I was first introduced to Dion from his distance clinic, which is still pretty relevant, or he's ripping huge shots up the hill at the toboggan that you can still find.
13. It's hilarious watching. So I have some perspective on those videos real quick. I was there when Dion filmed his. I was there for a lot of those when they were filmed.
Were you in the crowd for that Marty Peters one where he changes the people's form and stuff?
Yep, I was there for the more distance now with Marty Peters. There's one where they had, and it's wild to see all of the old Discraft pros: Greg Barsby, Robbie Bratton, Matt Blakely.
Yuli was really young,
and it was supposed to be. So Mark Ellis was hosting it. It was supposed to be like, hey. These pros are going to tell you how to throw and make you better. And none of them had like any good advice whatsoever. So Mark ad-libbed this part of it where he's like, just imagine yourself in their bodies and do what they do. And it's really probably their worst clinic video.
The distance showcase one where they're basically just throwing.
Yeah, basically that.
Yeah.
But if for most of your listening base probably hasn't played the toboggan, they moved the T-pad back like 100 feet for those. So it's even more impressive when they're throwing up that hill than when you see, when they play the Great Lakes Open there now, when you see them throw to the top of the hill, those guys were throwing 100 feet further to the top of that hill. And what's really crazy, I don't know if it's actually in that one or if it's just like a little clip, but at the end of the day, at the end of the thing, we were all up on the hill where the basket is for hole 13 of toboggan. And somehow it came up that we didn't think Robbie Bratton could throw from there to basket 3. And this is going to have no frame of reference for anyone that hasn't played toboggan now that I'm saying it. But basically, hole 3 and 13 run parallel to each other. And if you hyzer out really bad on hole 3, you end up on 13's fairway.
On the hill.
On the hill or at the base of the hill. And from the top of 13 to the basket of 13 is almost the same distance as hole 3, which is 900 something feet, maybe high 800s. Parked it with a Predator.
Yeah, that's the other funny thing is you go back and watch that. That was like his distance driver was like, yeah, I'm throwing the Predator. It's the fastest, most overstable disc out there. And it's like, man. And then Ulibarri's throwing 150 surges is what they showed in that, which I remember testing one of those a long time ago.
Oh, man, the surge. So near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. So getting back to what I was getting at with my question is there like resentment? Are you frustrated as a long-term Discraft lover and supporter that all these people all of a sudden have discovered how great the discs are when they've been this great the whole time?
It's more resentment towards the fact that things aren't as easy for me to get anymore. Not that like I'm happy Discraft is doing well and I'm happy that people are discovering how awesome the Buzz and the Comet and the Surge, the Force, all of the Zone, all of these discs are because they've been awesome for years. The Buzz is almost 20 years old.
Right. The Zone's what, over 10?
Yeah, the Zone's over 10. Nuke's over 10, although I'm not a huge Nuke fan, but whatever. Force is probably 10 years old now.
Force is older than the Nuke.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah. Wow.
The other thing that gets me is now whenever I go play, and since I've been throwing all this Discraft for my entire career of playing disc golf, now I look like a fanboy who's just now, oh, you just like discraft because Paul's there and like it's so cool. Especially because I fell in love with the Luna, and now I look like super fanboy, but like it's everything I want in a putter. It's super rounded. It's convex. It's got a smooth release because the bottom is so curved. It's shallow. It's stiff. It's everything I've wanted in a discraft putter for the longest time. And now I pull it out and they're like, oh yeah, it must be a Paul fan. And like I just recently tested the Kong, the one that you had, and I dig it. Especially with the fact that it seems like surges are going the way of the dodo and probably going to be gone soon enough. I know they just released the Ledgestone ESP Glow ones. But I mean, when that new Swirl ESP plastic came out, Discraft said they'd be 2017.
Yeah, I think so.
Discraft was like, oh, summer release for the Surge in this plastic, and it's almost summer 2019.
Yeah,
and
didn't happen.
And I don't think because it's not a popular mold. It's not. Do you know one other person that throws a Surge besides me?
No, I mean I carried them years ago. I had a couple of Nate Doss ones, and I threw the Surge SS for a longer period of time. I think I ended up. I forget what I moved away from the Surges. I think I started throwing Pro D Forces instead, and they had a little bit more range. So I just, I used to have a really simple Discraft bag too for a while. Where it was Pro D Forces, a couple of Z Forces, Stalkers, and a Surge SS were like all the drivers I had for a long time. Because the Pro D ones were so easy to break in, I could get a flippy one really easy, and then my go-to ones were 150. If you get a 150 Pro D Force that's brand new, they fly amazing. It just don't last very long. It's kind of funny because it ends up feeling like your favorite like little restaurant that all of a sudden becomes popular, and then you like go and you have to wait online for something that you always used to just go and get your table and do your thing, and you're like, damn, who are all these people? Like they're just kind of like butting in on your scene. It just definitely feels that way with Discraft now, where it's like all of a sudden now people are like battling each other on an auction on Facebook to try to get this nice looking Kong, where you could have just bought it 2 years ago if it didn't have Paul Macbeth's name on it and it was just a new Discraft disc. But ultimately it's still great. And one of the things that I think about it is like, why didn't they make this kind of a push sooner to like maintain relevance? Because when I came into the sport, as you said, it was Innova, it was Discraft, and then it was Gateway. And the common thing you'd see was I throw buzzes, Innova drivers, and I putt with wizards.
Yep.
Like that was a huge thing that everybody did. And in the bag videos in those days, they were using super soft wizards or whatever, the blend, the 50 million plastic blends that the wizard comes out in. And then, a lot of people use Discraft mid-ranges, and Innova drivers was the big thing. And then somewhere along the line, Innova just kept climbing and climbing and climbing to this huge powerhouse, and Discraft really kind of let it slip.
Well, I mean, it was 2012. There was interviews with Bob Giulio and everything. It was the whole Prodigy thing where they kind of just went away from disc golf because they felt that the pros that they had nurtured and raised up and everything just kind of abandoned them.
Yeah.
And so they kind of shied away from disc golf after that. Now, that said,
a lot of them did leave. So.
It's one of the, that will probably go down as one of the bigger moments in disc golf history.
Absolutely.
That spurred companies to actually give their professionals, I don't want to say what they deserve because, you're a professional disc golfer. Like that's
especially in those days where there wasn't really the revenue coming in like there is now,
right? Based
on that, because now, this whole conversation started with us talking about just how much pull somebody like Paul Macbeth actually has now, And it's largely because of the internet and like the fact that we've seen him play so much. And the other thing that's kind of part of this that nobody ever wants to mention is that he was also the face of the biggest manufacturer for his entire career leading up to that. So if you take that away from him and he wasn't Innova's guy on all of their posters, on all of their, like, every time you go to a Dick's Sporting Goods, you're not going to see anybody else in there, like on the box for the portable baskets, on all the posters, on all the flight charts. Like, it was Paul.
I wonder how much Innova stuff that still has Paul on it is just out there at the Dick's and the whatever. Just
probably a whole bunch. I mean, is there any effort for, like, would Innova even want to try to replace that stuff at their own cost to put Ricky on it and have to ship all of that, new promotional material? It doesn't really affect them at all if people think that Paul McBeth, there are probably a ton of Paul McBeth stamped plastic still at those stores as well, because I was just at Sportsman's Warehouse the other day and I was looking through the plastic there and it's all Paul Rocks and Thunderbirds and stuff, and it's all still in stock there, and that's just what's on the floor. They may have other stuff in the back. So how much of that is out there? It's pretty interesting to see how that all plays out.
Well, the other thing about Paul going to Discraft, I don't know how they've gotten away with it, but they've basically increased the price of every level of plastic, and people are paying it. Yeah. And, I remember people complaining that Gold Line and Fusion or whatever was like $1 more than ESP and Star. Yeah. And now, I mean, a Luna is a midline plastic that used to be $12.
Yeah, Jawbreaker is $12, and then the Lunas are $20.
And Lunas, how?
And it's a less durable blend as well.
Yeah,
for sure. Because there's a lot of people that have thrown Lunas and hit trees and have big chunks get knocked out of them and stuff.
Trust me, I'm scared every single day I putt.
Yeah, it's definitely going to happen. They're going to beat in pretty quick, and yeah, that is also one of the weird things about it, is like, why is all of a sudden a Z Force is $20 or $18 or whatever it was?
I mean, we know why. They got $1 million to recoup, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, the Kongs, the cheapest you've seen them is what, $20? Yeah. And I've seen them, upwards of 30, and that's retail.
Right. Let alone the guys
insane.
That are flipping them on Facebook for crazy money. The next day, after all those sold out and stuff, like 2-3 days later, a whole bunch of people, you find out that a whole bunch of people who are buying them on the midnight release are just trying to flip them. So now all of a sudden now they're back on Facebook, and some guys asking and getting $75, $65. I'm taking offers on all this kind of stuff, and it's just like, where is this money? Who has the money for a $75 thrower? It's a thrower.
I mean, a fool and his money are soon parted. Yeah. But yeah, I get it. Like, look at first run destroyers. They were ubiquitous and everywhere, and now first run destroyers are a couple $100 disc, right? Something like that. Who knows? I don't know. But
I was just telling Anthony the other day when we were at Leverage that my buddy lost a disc there on the last hole of that course. If you hit near the basket and skip, there's like a big cliff there that goes all the way down towards like the middle of the other side of the course. And my buddy lost a disc there years ago, and it was a Proto Star Destroyer. It was a Proto, and we didn't know, at the time. I think I had found out that it was something special at that time, but it still wasn't a big deal yet. And now he would really like to have that now.
Hindsight being 2020, like all of the stuff that I had access to that I could have bought and just have now, like Anton Destroyers, that was nothing. I could have bought a box of them.
Yeah. For sure.
Not first run buzzes.
I was at the Portland World's Fly Mart when they released those first run felons. I could have got a stack of those. I should have got at least one or two of them, but I think those were 20 at the time, and I didn't have much loot in those days. I got a Dimax or something with the Portland World's logo that I wanted to hang on my wall. I think that's the only thing I really purchased that day. But yeah, Bobby and Emac were there. They had all the stack of those first run felons that go for pretty good money these days. Yeah, it's interesting.
It,
And it's hard to say. It's hard to say what's gonna gain value, what isn't.
and I think that's what people are betting on, is that the prototype thing. And you know what? Way to go, Discraft, to get people to buy the same disc 2 and 3 times. Yeah. Like, releasing these prototypes has got to be the smartest thing, because it's the same disc that's going to come out in a month or two. But people are going to buy them now, and then they're going to buy the first runs, and then they're going to throw the stock runs. So you're going to have people buying the same discs 3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
So like,
it's genius. Do you think like the first run of Paul zones and stuff? Do you think that was actually one run? Had to have been more than a run.
I would bet dollars to donuts that it was stock disc they had laying around that they threw the Paul stamp on.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
And like the same thing with destroyers. And I think Terry talked about this on Smashbox one time, how everybody wants to hunt down like the AJ destroyers when they switch to Paul. And now that people want to get Paul destroyers when they switched to Ricky. And it's like at some point they took the next one off of the stack, and rather than stamping it with a Paul Macbeth stamp, they put Ricky's Raptor stamp on it.
That's exactly what happened.
They took a disc out of a box of hundreds of discs that were already made, and they just changed the stamp plate and kept on stamping.
It boggles my mind how much something that can be erased in 5 seconds with acetone drives the value of a disc.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense at all. The stamps are what's valuable, not the actual disc.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really strange. It doesn't really make any sense, but that definitely is a thing.
Well, yeah, let's look at touring pros. We were talking about it earlier when we were trying to come up with an idea to talk about. Look at I'll throw Paige Pierce under the bus. What do I care? She has no idea who I am. She'll never hear this. $28 for a Defender with your thumbprint stamp on it. Yeah. What the hell makes your thumbprint stamp worth $28 versus a stock Lucid Defender for $15 or $16?
Yeah, some of the pricing like that makes. And,
are you kidding?
And it is like, she's trying to raise money to stay out on the road and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, that was something that was done and is still done by like lower level players that aren't really like getting much. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like, I don't think people in Paige's position or Ricky or any of the other people that are kind of like selling their own custom discs, I really don't think they need to be selling them for much more than, would 20 not be enough?
And how much? It's not like they're buying them for the same
right. They're not paying like a retailer wholesale.
They're not paying
pricing.
The wholesale price. They're
for all we know, they're not getting any. They're not paying any price. It might just be part of her contract that she just gets a certain amount of stamped plastic to sell. So it could be 100%. Yeah, it's interesting. I would like to know. I don't really know, because when I did my run, I tried to price it so I would make a couple of bucks. But and then I feel like a lot of people that do those custom runs go for 20 plus. And I think. My discs, I was selling Lucid Emax for $16 or $17 with my custom stamp on them, and I was making money on all of them. It wasn't a lot, and that wasn't the point of it, but I definitely made money.
Well, there's a whole company that's based their whole business model around cool-looking stamps, black ink discs.
Yeah.
And
back in the day, it was Huck Lab, and they didn't even have a stamping machine. They just did dies.
Yep, those were them.
All right. I'm gonna keep it real for Bobby here. I'm not a big fan of Huck Lab, because I remember back in the day it was kind of a similar thing. I would go to like Next Adventure and I'd look at discs, and there'd be a Z Force, and then there'd be a Z Force that had a Huck Lab die on it, and it'd be like $10 more. And I'm like, why am I paying $10? You guys wiped the stamp off of this disc and put your like
why am I paying $10 to advertise for you?
Fake logo on it. Yeah, like it's a cool looking stamp. It's really strange. Although, speaking of discs, I'm kicking myself for not purchasing because I could have made money with them. At Portland Worlds, they released like Envies or something like that with a Huck Lab stamp on them. There was some type of Axiom disc Inspires or some, I forget what they were, and they only did like 100 of them. And another company that's been really successful by building its own niche and like having people that are devoted to it that'll pay extra for special runs and all that kind of stuff is MVP. Like they've really dialed that in well too. So that community was, I think those were selling for $250 and stuff, which is just crazy because they're one of the more rare kind of MVP collectors, I guess. Do you think that we're going to see people start to raise prices overall based on this? So you think like that kind of opens the door for more people to say, hey, let's pick up our prices? Here's another question. Do we think we're going to see Innova release prototype Ricky somethings and do kind of, yeah, exactly. That could be something that happened. It definitely seems to be a good model. Like DD obviously does the, not necessarily I guess they had prototype ones, but those mostly just went out to their team, which is kind of a more standard thing to do with prototypes, is to send them to your team to test and whatever, and usually not released to the public like that. But then they do like the special editions are the true first run, the first ones you can get, and then they only go to the certain retailers and all that kind of stuff. Do we think that people might kind of rip off this model from Discraft?
I don't see why they wouldn't. If you can make money twice and 3 times on the same disc, what reason do you have to not do the prototype thing? And then if Discraft's clearly proving that people are willing to pay $20 for a mid-grade disc and $25 for a premium plastic disc, what incentive is there to not try if you're in a latitude? Why wouldn't you? There's no will we reach a point where serious disc golfers are actually considering the price of discs when they're deciding what they're going to throw? Like, will we reach a point where someone goes, I used to like Destroyers, but Destroyers are now $25 and these Trespasses are $20, and they're a pretty close facsimile that I can make it work, and it saves me $5 each time. Like, will we reach a point where there's actual price wars on plastic between manufacturers?
Well, when you think about it, UC is kind of trying to move into that market where because part of the partnership with Yikun, since they're being made in China, they're actually cheaper. They're going to be like the cheapest full production, besides obviously like Walmart discs and stuff like that, which really doesn't count at all. They will be some of the cheapest plastic on the market, and I believe Eagle said in his In the Bag that he's going to be carrying one, if not at least one, if not 2 of those molds, because they're making really good stuff. And I hear that Yikun actually does make pretty nice flying plastic. I have not tested any of it yet.
As much as I am not the biggest UC fan, I give him credit for having foresight and seeing that. And, DD has always gone after the really youth market and having junior worlds at Emporia for 3 straight years.
And they sponsored many of the junior players from Junior Worlds that did well, including our friend of the channel, Jason Harden, who helps me out with some videos.
Yeah, so I mean, they're going after a target market of young people and the future of the game. And there's obviously more people continue to play disc golf as the years go on, as evident by the amount of plastic that's being sold and everything else. There's more buyers. There's a bigger market, and if you're hitting the youth on that, it's a good way to go. UC is going to the point of, hey, there's a lot of people that will play this, and if I can make it super cheap for them to play it, it incentivizes them to play because the cost is incredibly minimal, especially when you're selling a disc for $5 versus, you have a whatever putter, Spring Lion or whatever calling it. I have no idea.
I'm not. I think the only one I know of is the ox is the one that.
Isn't it spring ox?
Spring ox or something is the one that Eagle's bagging.
But you go to a store and there's the Discmania disc that's $5 versus a DX AVR for $8, and you have no idea what you're doing. Which one are you going to pick?
Exactly.
You're going to pick that $5 one.
Yeah, they both have artwork on them. They both look relatively similar. You don't really know what you're looking at anyway. And I'm not even saying that the EQ and stuff will be of lower quality. It might be just as good quality too. So it definitely makes sense. And it's a savvy move in a number of different ways. Even though the hype surrounding it and everything ended up being somewhat of a letdown, just kind of confusing.
It was somewhat of a letdown, but it was a much bigger thing than I expected it to be.
Right. It was definitely a surprise. So I'll give them that. It was a huge surprise. It was nothing I would have guessed. I took a stab at a couple of guesses. I think we did, didn't we?
I think we did it.
You and I did when we talked
to
to James. Yeah, we took some guesses and we were not correct. But here's the thing that's really savvy about this move, and what I believe to be the main reason why he did it, is now he has manufacturing partners in Asia, in China, right in the heart of Scandinavia, which is the second biggest market to the U.S., and then in the U.S. as well. So as things continue to progress, he will be able to more kind of push those different markets with a manufacturer that's home-based right there. You know what I mean? And it's all coming through that Discmania umbrella. You still have all the top players that they sponsor, like Simon and Eagle, throwing and promoting the plastic. And we know Latitude 64 is going to make beautiful stuff, and it's going to be good flying stuff made to a very high quality level. And I believe Yukon has similar manufacturing where it's a lot of, automated stuff, which kind of drives up the consistency, which is something that Discmania could probably use.
Hey-o.
Okay.
But so the logistics alone behind what he's doing it's smart. It's really, really smart. You have distribution hubs across the entire world now. And I wouldn't be surprised if they add in a fourth and it's Castoplast in New Zealand. Then you have every single emerging market covered.
I think you're talking about RPM.
Isn't Castoplast?
Castoplast is Swedish as well.
Oh,
I believe.
Well, I'm an idiot.
I think it's RPM discs are either New Zealand or Australia. I'm not 100% sure.
So that's what I meant.
Yeah. They have similar. I've gotten them and Yikun confused before. They have similar kind of stamp motifs and stuff, and I think some of that plastic has showed up at the Disc Golf Depot, but I don't believe I've thrown any of that stuff at all. I should definitely look into it. I might try to pick up some of the Yikun stuff and test it out just to see. I hear good things about it. I'd be interested to see how it actually goes. So one thing I did before we wrap up this episode was I put up a quick post on Instagram. I only had a couple of submissions. This is the first time doing this. If you have a question for me or Andy or whatever, something that we should touch on the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast, feel free to send me an email, discgolfnerd1@gmail.com. You can hit me up there for whatever reason, essentially. But if you have a question, go ahead and shoot it there, and we can try to touch on it on the show. If you have a topic idea or anything like that, that's all welcome. I posted that on my Instagram. I had a few different ones. Here's one for you, Andy. Your rankings of where we stand in terms of who the best players in the world right now. I mean, I think I can't see how you could go anywhere other than Paul, Rick, Eagle. But what's your order?
Probably Paul, Rick, Eagle. Yeah. As for a top three, I mean, you could probably flip-flop Eagle and Rick and no one would be upset. But it's pretty clear Paul's number one right now. Going down to 4 and 5, you look at wins, you probably have Calvin Heimberg there.
Calvin's definitely up there. Calvin now has beaten Paul twice, Eagle once, Rick once this season. Paul has beaten Rick once and Eagle once. And Eagle has beaten Paul and Ricky once. Ricky twice. That's all we really have to work with so far. I think you can make a strong argument for Eagle still being the number one player in the world right now. If they're all three of them firing on all cylinders, who's the best? I have no idea. I really don't know. They're like Eagles definitely has the distance advantage over both of them, although they're, Paul and Rick, especially in terms of functional golf distance, are unbelievable. Eagles putting is incredible right now, but obviously Paul and Ricky, when their putting is on, are two of the greatest to ever play the game. So, I mean, it's almost a three-way coin toss there. I have no idea who's the best.
Yeah, you put the three of them on any course, you're not going to know who's going to win until it's over. Yeah. Unless Rick has one of his few times a year where he just duffs it.
Yeah. He's good for one of those.
He's good for 1 to 2 of those a year, it seems like.
Eagles generally good for one of those, but not the last. Yeah,
Eagles,
not last season. I don't think. I don't think he had
Worlds.
Any. Did he have a dud?
Worlds.
Oh yeah, what like 37th or something?
Something like that.
That didn't go well.
Eagle does not like Vermont, even though those courses are absolutely incredible. Having played them,
you would think he would too. You really think he would? Okay, another one. DG Weekly. Oh, that was that first question.
Are we just going to leave the women off? Cool.
Oh, how dare you?
How dare I?
I forgot. Okay, no, this first question, just before we go on, is from Austin Moorhead. So thanks, Austin. All right, so who you got? Who you got for the FPO then?
All right, so FPO, it's been kind of wild. Like, we've had any other year, you wouldn't even have to think; it'd just be Paige, right? For sure. I gotta say, it's probably Kat right now, right?
Overall, it seems like Katrina's having the strongest season. Although we just saw Paige do what she did out at Nick Hyde and kind of come from behind and just
a whole
hunting people down.
Another thing, though.
Yeah,
the way that whole thing went down with the rain delay and
very weird
having
situation.
To finish the second round after the third round. And everything, the way that went down,
it looked like Rebecca Cox was going to win it for the whole, and then all of a sudden I refreshed UDisc at some point, and I was like, now there's a round 3,
it
was marked there. I'm like, what's going on here? I thought this was over, and then they're still playing out.
I'm surprised there's not more outrage about the way that worked and the way that went down.
Yeah, very weird situation. I think. Yeah, it's a tough one. What do you do? Like, there's got to be a better. That could be a whole nother podcast. Is what is a better solution for shortening events when you have inclement weather like that? Because it's a thing that's played a huge factor in a lot of different.
I've definitely
events.
heard I still remember your crying from 2015 or 2016.
I will never let that go. Ricky was going to track down Germ. Final day. We all knew it. He ends with the ace on 17. He was like 2 strokes away. There's no way Germ was holding off charging 2016 Rick on that final day. I don't know. Okay. So yeah, I think you're right though. I think Katrina's having the best start to the season. I think this might be a turning point for Paige. We'll see what happens kind of moving forward into Jonesboro. I believe she won Jonesboro last year, did she not?
I believe so, yeah. And then, let's look at the other Paige Bierkes. Like, comes out strong at Vegas, and then it's been a rough road.
Yeah. If there's one thing that, and no disrespect meant, if there's one thing that I notice a lot about the FPO division in general is that there's a lot more
parity
swings between it's rare that you see somebody who's super consistent is just always like kind of flat level throughout the season. There's always a lot of ups and downs and big wins and bad performances, and you never really know. It's kind of a crapshoot. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Bjerkes does on Jonesboro on that layout, because she definitely has the distance over a lot of the field, but not necessarily against Big Page.
And
Cat. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all goes down. And it's not necessarily a super technical course where she's going to be like lacing shots with that judge off the tee and stuff. You're going to have to play that kind of open, long range golf at Jonesboro to see how it all works out. Okay, moving on from that, DG Weekly asks, what's worse, missing a 10-footer or watching the Timbers play a game this season? That's a tough one. The Timbers are not doing well. I have not been watching them.
Well, the Timbers opened the season last year not great either.
That's true.
And then
they went all the way.
In the finals.
That is also true. That's one of the things I don't like about the way American sports are structured. There's like very few other places, like take England, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with English soccer. England basically originated soccer. They created the rules, a very long time ago. The way that the Premier League works, which I think is a beautiful system, every team plays every other team home and away. 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. Obviously 0 points if you lose. And that's it. There's no playoffs or anything. Like, you have the most points, you win. So it's almost undoubtedly the most consistent team throughout the season wins. And then also they have the relegation system, which is awesome too, and I'm a big fan of that as well. I think that's a cool system. But then you don't see these like fluky winners where you limp into the playoffs, and then the Timbers did that the year they won. They barely scraped into the playoffs, and then they put together 3 or 4 or whatever, 5 wins in a row, and all of a sudden you're the champions. It's interesting. But yeah, I'm going to go with that's kind of a wash. Missing a 10-footer or
so
watching
true.
the Timbers.
It's terribly true.
Yeah.
This is not MLS nerd, though.
Yeah,
so.
Neither of those are very good. Okay, and then I think the only other one I got one from Tyler Holman who just says upshots with an exclamation point. I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Well,
we could go with
I enjoy the Upshot podcast. I enjoy it quite a bit. I feel like it's the best journalistic podcast in disc golf, and they're not actually afraid to ask questions that are legit hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
Not, they're not friends with everyone like Smashbox is, like DGAM is. Was it on? Yeah, I think it was on the Upshot, where they were talking about the new podcast, the Inside Line, I think it's called. And the guy that hosts it, Mood, he at the Vegas, Paige was like, I should have played a warm-up event, whatever. He asked her why she didn't perform to the level she expects. And she said, I should have played a warm-up event, and gotten back into the swing of things a little earlier. And he followed up with, you've been touring for, years now. You should know to do this. What made you not do it? And apparently her reaction was just shock because no one's asked her questions like that before. Yeah. Because we take everything at face value and everyone's so nice because they don't want to break their friendship with the pros. And that's one of the things I love about the Upshot is they're journalists. They're not friends.
Yeah.
They're there to report.
Yeah, Smashbox definitely has that vibe where they're kind of friends with everybody, and they keep it pretty light. And I mean, they'll definitely ask some hard-hitting questions, but it's very, very rarely like, what's the word, argumentative or like, they never really kind of incite any kind of an argument or really push it too hard,
Well, yeah, and is there a week ever on Smashbox where Terry or Johnny knows something and they allude that they know something but say they can't say anything, da-da-da-da. Upshot doesn't do that. If Upshot has information, they say the information. Yeah. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'll tell you that sort of I know something you don't, but I can't tell you drives me up a wall. I hate that.
That's Terry's move, too. Terry does that all the time.
Definitely. And I still watch Smashbox religiously every week, except now because we're recording on Tuesday.
They're literally on right now. Yeah. Well, even though I don't think that's what he was referring to with this question, so let's go a slightly more basic. And what's your main Upshot disc?
Zone or Luna?
Zone, okay. Yeah, I'm basically either a soft magnet or a caltrop in pretty much the same manner. Caltrup's not as overstable as his own, but I don't throw with as much snap as you do either, so it's kind of works out fine. And then finally, from Weston Whitney, why do companies release new high-speed discs every year? This gets back to what we talked about earlier, and it's a good point because how many times do you hear, oh, Latitude has a new disc coming out. What is it? It's an overstable high-speed driver.
With the exact same numbers every time. 12.304. Yeah. Like, how many 12.304 or
12.403.
Yeah,
I think that's
between all three lines, there's 100 Destroyer clones. Because that's what they are.
And there's a lot of 13.5 -1.3s too, and 14.5.0.2 and how many overstable high-speed distance drivers do we need? What I answered to him on Instagram is they must just keep doing it because they keep selling. Yeah. I mean, if they're not selling, they wouldn't keep doing it. But it does seem to be like there's far and away way more of that type of disc being released all the time than anything else.
Well, I mean, this year and last year seemed to be the year of the overstable mid. That's true. But yeah, high-speed drivers sell. You go to a store, people want the fast thing that's going to go far, and you see a speed of 12 that's better than a speed of 5. I mean, there's that whole conversation of, are we doing a disservice by not informing the customer more, but how much can you whatever. Yeah. You get the basic drill there, but they sell, and they're new, and people always want the newest, freshest, shiniest thing.
Yeah.
And people want distance drivers because they think they're going to make them throw farther. And
I also like how often it's the farthest flying disc on the market. Every time it comes out, the new high-speed distance driver, this is the farthest flying disc I've ever thrown, blah, blah, blah. Is it really, though? Like, how much farther is it going?
Yeah, how much farther is a Cloudbreaker for Eagle legitimately going than a PD2?
Yeah.
It's not. It
can't be that different.
And for the average person, it sure is.
The only reason he's getting more, I feel like the only reason he's getting more distance out of those Cloudbreakers is because they're not so damn overstable. So he can flip them up and they fly farther because they're like a little bit more understable. And like, that's the other thing is everybody wants to do the high speed overstable distance driver, which to me is the most boring disc in the game. Like a 13, 14 speed, really overstable disc is my least favorite style of disc to throw on the market, hands down. I would rather throw a Rattler than throw, a Warhorse or a Nuke OS or something like that. Those are just really not very fun to throw.
We're definitely more old school in we want floaty and more full flight out of our discs rather than, neither of us are big hyzer throwers. We're not. Well, we never will be. So we don't. We find a disc that does the big hyzer, and all right, we're good. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't. We're not looking for that big hyzer to go an extra 30 feet, or we're not dialing in that kind of shot because we're not using that kind of shot.
Like I use a Gladiator in that role, and mostly I use it because I can get some distance out of it, even though it's overstable. Because if I really rip it, it'll kind of stand up for a little bit before it hooks up. But it's like the least likely disc in my bag to like change out to anything else because I don't. It's there, it does its job, and I don't really care. You know what I mean? So I wonder why. Like I think it's. Yeah, must just be people want to see if they can get that little extra distance, or it's just the new shiny thing, so just keep selling. But that's got to be the only reason to keep putting out high-speed distance drivers is I guess they're trying to push the envelope and come out with the new fastest thing that the pros can throw. And if you have that crazy arm, it makes sense. You can really rip on something and know exactly what it's going to do.
Here's a question for you. A year from now, how many pros are throwing Raiders over Defenders?
1 year from now? It's a tough call. Probably not that many.
Because they're hyping the crap. Every DD Pro is, the Raiders the best thing in the world. I love this disc. It's going to replace everything in my bag. I'm going to putt with Raiders now. And I'm willing to bet a year from now, everyone's still throwing Defenders and what's the other one? Enforcers.
Yeah, probably, man. And then, Innova releases the Corvette. It's supposed to be the fastest disc on the market. It's never going to touch the Destroyer. The Destroyer is just going to keep.
The people have settled in. There's certain molds that you just, those are your core, and those are what people have settled into. I mean, I remember when the Boss came out; those flew off the shelves, but people went right back to the Destroyer. Before the Destroyer, it was the Wraith. Before the Wraith, it was...
I think the Nuke and the Force had a similar vibe when they came out, too. Mm-hmm. A lot of people switched to the Nuke for a little bit, and then they realized that the Force is...
a better mold.
More consistent, and, yeah, it basically does almost the same thing, just a little more overstable. Obviously, depending on plastic and all that stuff. But, yeah, that's a pretty long-winded answer to that question, but I think it's a good one to think about because it's totally true, and I've thought about that plenty of times. Like, how many freaking overstable 13-speed drivers do we need? Really?
Yeah, I bet you if you wipe the stamp off, like, a Cutlass, a Gladiator, a Recoil,
Defender,
Enforcer, like, I bet you if you took them out and just gave them to people that think they could name them all, couldn't do it because they're so similar.
Yeah. There's more, too. There's, like, the Catapult, or one of those West Side ones has the same numbers as well. Yeah, it's true. It would be interesting to do that, actually, to take some of these molds that are really, really similar to a different mold and see if people could actually tell the difference by feel or by flight. It would probably be a lot harder than you'd think, unless you're Eagle, that's one of the weirder things about Eagle.
I still want to see him do that live.
They did it when he came to the depot. Riker had him try out a couple different things, and he got it for sure. It's for you guys don't know what we're talking about. You can hand Eagle McMahon any disc. Like, it doesn't even matter what company. It could be a Castoplast or something, and he somehow knows what it is by feel. Even if you can blindfold him, hand him something, purposely try to trick him. I think what they tried to do is they tried to give him a glow fly, rather, because he knew it was a blowfly immediately, because that's honestly one of the most recognizable discs.
Right.
But it was a glow fly, which you can't tell because it's glow plastic, or, it's glow rubber or whatever. But he guessed it, and he's like, I'm going to guess it was... I think he still figured it out. But yeah, it's really weird. Riker told me he had him try several different things, random things out of the Disc Golf Depot's selection, and they have the biggest selection in the Pacific Northwest by far.
How much is Jerry paying you for this spot?
I need to go see Jerry, man. I haven't even been in there in a while. But yeah, and then Eagle can just guess it. He can figure it out. It's really trippy. It's a very strange thing.
Yeah, if you've never seen, he does it on some of his vlogs. I have no idea which one, so good luck. I guess.
Think that's probably where I think one of his vlogs pre-Beaver State, he went to check out the depot and Riker, and they did it on that video. I'll see if I can find it. And yeah, really wild. But I don't even know, how did we get there? How did we get to that? Oh, yeah, because we were talking about, could you tell the difference between all these different high-speed discs if you took this? With the Gladiator and the Defender in particular, extremely similar. I don't think I could tell the difference between an Opto Gladiator and a Lucid Defender. I'm not 100% sure I can tell the difference. I can't wait
to see the comments on this video. Like, of course I can tell the difference. Guaranteed.
Yeah, we might get that. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode. It's a whole lot of rambling, but it's nice to actually talk about some plastic here on the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. Fumble. Man down. I don't even know what that was. Something just fell off my
You're going to have to do that outro.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up for this episode. That will do it for this.
All right, let's try this one more time. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Oh, wow, this is harder than I thought.
It's not as easy as you think, is it?
Okay. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Plastic Podcast. It's been a lot of rambling, but it's kind of nice to actually hear... See, I can't do this because I'm a guest on this show. Why the hell am I even trying?
Okay, I got you. All right, let me take over here. All right, guys, we're going to call it a night for this episode of the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. It is nice to actually touch on some more plastic related topics here on this particular episode, but we hope to do much more of them in the future. So stay tuned. Thanks for all your support. We'll check you later. All right, cheers.
Cheers.